content of the collection and what that means for enhancing the usability of that collection. So the final slide, I think, Barbara, is we are the three, Richard, Lauren, and I are the ones that are heading up this, and we're really excited about it, this special collection. So I think now we would turn it over to questions and answers. Is that right, Barbara?
Yes, thank you. We're ready to answer your questions. So have there been any asked in the chat? I haven't been checking.
I've been watching. I haven't seen any questions in the chat.
Okay.
If anybody wants to put a question in now, I can read it for you. Or if you would like to indicate that you want to unmute and speak, we can call on you if you can use your participants pane to raise your hand. We can call on you, or just indicate, somehow wave at me that you want to speak. We can call on you.
Don't be shy. So you can be asking any questions about the more general introduction I gave, or the journal itself, or the special collection, or anything in between.
I see that Lucy has her hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm coming from kind of the natural language processing space, doing some work with archival metadata descriptions. And for me, this is really interesting to see, because the kind of machine learning and natural language processing community has been talking a lot about ways to improve the documentation of the data that algorithms are trained on, as these algorithms are found to be quite biased, as a part of a way of trying to figure out how to start addressing those biases. And so I'm really excited about this idea of also peer reviewing the data sets themselves and having kind of more attention put on that process of having papers dedicated to that, to kind of encourage stronger documentation and make these data sets more usable. But I could see the challenges. Well, I guess I can imagine some challenges with that as well. And I'm curious, especially when it comes to the review of data sets, just kind of what that would entail, and would it be sort of held within the discipline of linguistics, or would you consider kind of also having reviews think about the ways that this data might be used in other contexts? And would it be, for example, like if I'm a developer brought onto a project, would my perspective be included in that kind of review of the usability of the data set? Or is that not really the use case for this?
So I can answer from the general journals point of view, and then Richard and the others can jump in on the special collection. So yeah, thank you for the question. I'm actually also a computational linguist. I didn't mention that, but that is my day job. And so I very much empathize with what you said. And I should say, really, the journal isn't the peer review in the journal isn't focused on reviewing the data, but rather the data papers. But obviously, you're raising a very general, important questions for the community. I think what we found in the journal is that we can't ask reviewers to do that as well. And I have heard discussions about peer review of data sets happening at RDA and elsewhere. So this is a very hot topic. So what we do is we distinguish the two, and the peer reviews basically focus on the clarity, the presentation, the structure of the paper, the data papers, or the full rank research papers. They also check that the data have been deposited in a recommended repository, and that is open, and all of that. And as you said, they very much assess the reuse potential. When it comes to actually reviewing the data, I think that is a big job to ask reviewers to do, and it would require, I think, a big effort from the community to establish really processes and ways to handle it in a kind of fair way. I mean, sometimes you really need to run some scripts to check, for example, for the consistency in the data. Check the future proof of the data, how standards can be used in the future as well. And with the data journals, as far as I know, don't quite do that, but there is a gap to be filled. But I'm really keen to hear what the others have to say. I also can see some computational linguists in the audience who are very welcome to jump in to this conversation.
Well, yeah, perhaps I would say for language documentation, I think we're lucky in a sense that there are some standards when it comes to the notion of a documentary collection. So in a lot of Himmelmann's early publications in this domain, he outlined some ideals for what a documentary collection would consist of. So for example, to be representative of all the variation exhibited by a community, it should be as comprehensive as possible. So that means as many speakers as possible, of as many different backgrounds and identities as possible, with as many different kinds of speech acts represented in the collection. So we do have some guideposts that we can use in assessing a collection from that particular perspective. But if you take a much broader perspective on data sets more generally, it would be much more challenging. How would you possibly review a language documentation data set versus a data set from a different subdiscipline? You can't very easily compare those. So in this sense, we're trying to be very narrow in our focus. In terms of the review processes, I think the easiest way that we've been thinking about it is simply the creation of the equivalent of a book review. So this wouldn't be a process whereby the curator or creator of a data set submits something to a journal, but rather someone out of their own volition who has the experience of using a data set or interacting with a data set decides to submit a review of that data set. And what we would like to do, though, is to set some standards for even those sorts of reviews. But some others have mentioned this idea of creating something like a journal that is dedicated to this process of actually assessing data sets. But as Barbara pointed out, it's very time consuming. And I don't imagine that many already existing journals would be interested in adding that in addition to all the other tasks they already they have on their plate. So perhaps we would see dedicated journals emerging specifically for that format. That's one possibility. But yeah, right now it's totally open. These are just new ideas that are coming up, and we're hoping to continue the conversation. And thank you for your question.
I got a question
you.
sort of on this topic that was sent just to me in the chat. So it was anonymous, so I'll just read it, paraphrase a little bit. So it's hard enough to find reviewers for journal articles these days. What is the incentive for a reviewer to put in all of the work to review an entire data set? Are there models that encourage this kind of review, or things that we can do to encourage reviewers to participate? And thinking about something that Richard just said, I think that related in my mind to this is that if you can have a publication out of that review, it's not a sort of behind the scenes, closed, blind review that nobody sees and it's hard to get credit for. This can be a publication like one of these data set reviews that's an analog to a book review, or an entire longer paper that's a real discussion of the data set that you're reviewing. That could be a publication to add on to the record. I know in the sciences discipline, there are some paid reviewing positions. I'm not really sure that will get much of a foothold in the humanities, although maybe there's a funder out there who's interested in this sort of thing. But I think one of the biggest issues in the United States, at least from my perspective, is that this kind of activity isn't really incentivized at academic positions. You know, it's seen as sort of something you're expected to do as part of, you know, a faculty position at a university. You're just kind of expected to do that at some time, do a peer review for a journal at some point during your day when you have so many other things to do. I think it would be a really good thing to have this kind of labor explicitly acknowledged in things like, you know, tenured promotion review criteria, or even annual reviews or awards or other things of this nature that folks can do, you know, for those who have power over changing or adding language to these sorts of things. I don't know, do any of the rest of you have any other ideas of how to incentivize people to perform these kinds of labor-intensive reviews?
Yeah, does anyone have suggestions? I mean, I think it's really interesting discussion. I like Richard's idea of having other people who are using the data anyway to be reviewing the data set. Lucy, do you still have your hand up? Please feel free to unmute yourself if you, or if that.
And Francesca. No.
Francesca, yes. Oh, please. Sorry, my screen is moving around. It's okay. Francesca.
Hi, it was a very interesting discussion and presentation. Thanks for this panel. So just for those who may not know me, I'm Francesca Frantini. I work at the Institute for Computational Linguistics, and starting from January, I'm also one of the 4 directors of Plenary, which is the language resources infrastructure in Europe, and who was also active. I mean, some of our national coordinators were also active in LDIG and in redacting the terms of recommendations. So of course we have a network of repositories that are dedicated to language resources, and which of course allow people to deposit data. To begin with, because they are disciplinary repositories, of course, they provide some sort of initial check by verifying also the adherence to standards, disciplinary standards, etc. So this is the first, very, very basic first kind of check or control over the data quality, although of course it's not enough. Then, yeah, another thing that I wanted to suggest in this direction of what was said now about reviewing. So there are some other experiments also from our community in Europe. There is some things that are done within the framework of the LREC conference. Notably, they encouraged you to cite and acknowledge resources and corpora that by others, by third parties. This has produced also maybe you know it, the LRE map, which I mean, it's not a review, of course there is no review, but if you can find a resource, and then you can find papers that use this resource. Of course, some of these will be the paper that so the data paper that describes the resource, so by the same authors, but then there will be other papers by other people that cite this resource. So the whole thing of data citation is an indirect maybe way of reviewing. And yeah, okay, so then more upper level. Now in Europe there is this thing coming up, the EOSC. We don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but more or less all infrastructures are pushed, encouraged to converge towards it. Okay, within the framework of EOSC, there's a lot of discussions about data citation. Also, I will be soon part of a working task force on data stewardship and career path for data stewards. And for instance, they are also creating a platform for data publication, so to allow for open access publication when so that researchers comply with the requirements of open access. Within this platform, first of all, there will be some sort of guidance to where to deposit also the data. And from what I understand, there will be an open review process, which means that the reviews and the comments will also have a persistent identifier and will be citable as well. So, okay, we have not yet made the leap to be able to review also the data sets, but if in some sense, this could be an idea in the sense that if you have a data paper, you have an open review system, you could make those reviews citable, and then in some sense, they become a research outcome as well. So these are just few ideas that come to mind from what I've heard so far.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Within ESC, there's also special project on social sciences and humanities, a shock,
yes.
with whom I'm in contact. So yeah, there's really a lot going on in this space. So
yeah, there's shock, and there's another project which is called the Triple, which should build a discovery platform for the SSH. So it should be able to put together the papers with the data sets, with the funding projects, with the researchers that work on it, with the institutions, and so on and so forth. So in this project, nothing has been said so far over reviews, to be honest, but maybe they could be part of the, I mean, because so far reviews were anonymous and not shareable, but if in a framework of open reviews, reviews could be very well become an object in this ecosystem.
Yeah, and while you were speaking, I was thinking if the reviews become academic outputs, then who reviews them? But it goes into an endless loop. But yeah, it's really interesting. And does anyone want to add any thoughts about this, or start a new thread?
I may add something about your last remark about who is going to review the review. I think this is kind of point of open review, because then you have a kind of discussion on a research output. And also another point I would like to make is that I think we should work together, you know, with the service providers like repositories. As Francesca mentioned, they do a kind of, or at least if it's a curated repository, they do a kind of basic curation and quality check. But it's only mostly about how to support the FAIR principles, so to make them interoperable and findable and so on. And also there is some work, some efforts being done about automate the process of reviewing. So if you do kind of data intensive research like statistics and so on, there are some tools being developed to rerun your for instance your statistical scripts and check if the output is what you claim in your article, for instance. And some of this we are working now to integrate with for instance the Dataverse software which we use in our repository. So there is quite a lot of efforts going on this topic.
Thank you, Philip. That's one of the things that we discussed when we were talking about the special collection was the tools that could make reviewing easier or that could automate some part of it. So if there's an effort to apply some of these automated tools that could help language documentation data set review in any way that might contribute there, I think that sounds like a potential paper for the volume.
I was wondering if, yeah, thank you. If the guest editors also want to add any more practical details about the special collection, the deadline, how it's going to work, submission process.
Yes, I think we might have actually originally had a slide about that. Maybe it, somehow didn't make it. But
Is it the last one? Should I
it might be in there.
should I go back?
It's not the last one. The last one's just blank.
Oh.
But we should probably say that the call for papers is available on the on JOHD's web page. There is a special collections page, which I can quickly show.
Here, I'm just sharing the that slide I was referring to.
Let me just quickly share my screen again. Oh, sorry. Are you sharing?
Yeah, I already shared it.
Ah, perfect.
This was the last slide. So it's the deadline for submissions is July 1st, so still have quite some time. There's some additional submission guidelines if you go onto the JOHD website. And if you do have any questions about the special collection, obviously you can ask us right now. This is a wonderful time to ask a question. We also have an email there at the bottom of the screen. You can contact us there for any questions specifically about this special collection. But as Hugh had mentioned, all the submissions for this special collection should be the long paper type or the research paper type. So between 3,000 and 6,000 words in length.
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna share the page to the special collection call for papers as well.
Yeah, I believe Lauren just put that into the chat.
Yeah,
oh,
so if
you can show us too. Thanks.
Yeah, so if you, so this is the web, the journal's web homepage, and the content, there is a special collections page, which lists the 3 open special collections, and this one is the one we're talking about, with short description and a link to the full call for papers. The journal submission guidelines are also available on the submissions page. And by the way, yes, we do have a feature in the homepage as well. This is the page explaining how you go about submitting. And we do have an instance on Dataverse as well. There's a page on repositories where we list different recommended repositories, and JOHD has a special arrangement with Dataverse, but we also mention other repositories like Fiction, Zenodo, etc. I should also say that if you are interested in following our updates, we have a mailing list, and we are also on Twitter. We have 2 brilliant social media editors who really helped us visibility. So Twitter is also a good way to follow what we're up to. And of course, if you want to collaborate or contribute to the journal in any way, always welcoming new people. This is a team of volunteers, mainly linguists so far, so wouldn't mind some variety, diversity, but of course, if you're a linguist, you're very welcome to join as well. So just get in touch with me on this. There isn't a contact page on the website, or you can just find me on Twitter or Google me. And I actually see some of the people working on the journal, Mandy and Nilo, and at least those 2. So if you're very welcome to introduce yourself if you want. Unless we have a burning question from anyone from the audience. There's me, Nilo, another linguist.
Yes, hi, another linguist, like many others. So yeah, I'm a DPhil student in linguistics at Oxford, and I'm also a editorial assistant for JOHD and a copy editor since May last year. Right now I'm also doing some data analysis, like the starting of it, let's say, because we still obviously we're still obviously working on author surveys. They're quite new, but we're trying to see, what our the reasons why our authors submit to the journal, like what are the topics covered mostly, and so using that, how to to improve the journal as a whole. That's it. I don't know if Barbara wants to add anything else to it, but
yeah, no, just thank you. Yeah, we're trying to be data driven as much as we can. So we don't have that much data as a journal yet, but it's growing, and really trying to adapt to authors' feedback. And Mandy also may want to introduce herself.
I don't know if she's here now.
So maybe she's Cambridge PhD student in linguistics with a psychology background, and she's also getting editor of the COVID-19 special collection. But I really enjoyed the conversation about peer review, and actually we'll be circulating a post-event survey. So if you would like to have more time to cover some of these topics in more detail, that it'd be great to know, because again, this is an experiment. We're trying to organize these events in a best, the way that is most useful for people. So we kept it quite general, but I appreciate we have experts here who may want to contribute to a more detailed discussion, and possibly also explore ways of working together to shape things, like including, for example, a peer review model for data papers. So yeah, so feel free to get in touch, or leave a comment in the survey, or in any other way. Yeah, I also see some non-linguists. Don't feel shy. Please speak up. Dimitris and others are very welcome to take part in this conversation. You're muted.
Yeah, I don't know if we can hear you, Dimitris.
Hello there. Hello, everyone. I'm more from the computational side, so I have an interest in language. But yes, today I'm more observing and see the way that you are setting up the landscape. And I hope in the future I will have more active contribution to the discussion.
Thank you for that. Should I play some elevator music to break the ice?
Well, I just realized that we have been working on a grant proposal to upgrade our repository, and one of the work packages is actually about data peer review. So the aim is to establish an approved and reliable workflows for data peer review, so that it would be an integrated part of the peer review process in scholarly articles and book manuscripts. So I mean, this is just a grant description. We don't know the details. We would have to figure out how we should do this. I mean, we had this discussion a while ago in this meeting. So I think if we get this grant, I'm sure we'll be contacting you, and maybe we could have a discussion, another discussion about it, and to get some feedback and input. Yeah.
Sounds very exciting. Yes, good luck with your grant.
Yeah, thanks. We're working with Harvard and Language Science Press and what's it called? Public Knowledge Project. The guys developing the please help me with the names.
Open Journal System.
Open Journal System, yes, because we use Open Journal System also to hosting some of our journals. And then there is an organization called I don't know how to pronounce this. It is in Brazil, Cielo.
Yellow.
Yeah. So I think it would be very, very interesting project.
Yeah,
Who's
nice.
your-
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, Philip, who's your collaborator at Harvard?
Well, it's the people working on the Dataverse software, because we use the Dataverse software, and we and also Dans in the Netherlands is collaborating, and yeah, DataSite and others. Yeah.
I just say that because I know that there's a linguist at Harvard that applied for an NSF grant to review several language documentation collections, but the type of review is a technical review, as I understand it. So when you more or less download the materials, then what sort of, are the materials encoded in Unicode, or were they in a hacked font, essentially, that isn't Unicode but has Unicode code points, kind of questions. So in that type of situation, scripts might not determine that it's not a Unicode encoding. So there's been some discussion, at least I was at a conference for language archiving in Sydney this past February. It was hosted virtually, so I was able to attend from France. But there was a bit of a discussion there at for how should legacy materials be curated and involved in this peer review or reviewed or used. How should they be evaluated, and how should that those experiences in using the data be brought forward? So I think that's a real part of our discipline broadly, and that conversation needs to be carried forward as well.
Yes, yeah, sounds interesting. I know also that it's there is quite a big variation within linguistics. I mean, some linguists, they don't care about data, so and others would say, if I have to review a dissertation, I won't do it unless I get access to your data, because I can't review your dissertation without access to your data. So there is yeah, multiple approaches.
Yeah, and is your grant meant to be for specific for linguistics, or is it more general?
No, it's a national grant here in Norway. They each year or every second year they have quite a lot of money for national infrastructure. So right now our archive, it's called Trolling, is part of our national archive, but we are going to move it out because it's a domain specific archive. But the work we will be doing will also benefit our language and linguistics archive.
Yeah, because generally there's lots of conversation about open data, open code, peer review in general, and in the sciences particularly, and the humanities tend to be a bit left out and not part of the conversation. So it's it's particularly important to have. Sorry, my son is having dinner. It's particularly important to have yes, these disciplines represented at the table.
Yeah, and also, everyone is talking about linked open data, and if you I think within linguistics, if many of our data sets in our repository, they could be sound files or spreadsheets of annotated data, or so they wouldn't. I mean they they have never heard about the open linked data. So there's another discussion we are having on how could we support open linked data, within this long tail of linguistic research. So there should be kind of easy way to structure your spreadsheets, for instance, to make them available for harvesting in a linked data manner.
One of the interesting things I ran across last week related to that linked data was, I think there was a fellow by the name of Christian, somebody help me with his last name, but
Kyarkos?
Yeah, exactly. So he had a group, I think even before RDA was a thing, is linked data and linguistics. And I was part of that. And they had a conference, I think, or a workshop, maybe it was in Iceland or something, but I ran across that one of their volumes just recently got published. And in that, a guy by the name of Gary Simons, who worked with OLAC, which is the Open Language Archive metadata aggregator, he had a paper that talked about taking the records and the metadata of the resources and making them available as linked data. So even if the contents aren't linked data, then the records can be linked data. And I thought that was an interesting layer distinction.
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely, yeah. So the metadata in our repository would in principle be available for linked data, but not the content, the spreadsheet or any other file. But there is some efforts. I think it's at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, where they have working on a kind of format for instance, for tabular data, on how to make this an easy way to make your tabular data supporting linked data. Yeah.
I think using JSON LD or something like this, right?
Yeah, I think that you could. There is if you could agree on how you the setup of your spreadsheets, for instance, then it could be like you could the output could be an JSON LD file.
I just wanted to add that there in the chat you will find two links, one to the Nexus Linguarum cost action, which is also Barbara knows very well, dedicated to linguistics linked open data. And then just one line above, I posted the link to a Clarin Cafe, which will be which is planned for Thursday next week, which is exactly on these topics, organized among others, not organized, but he's one of the speakers, Christian Kyarkos and others. And by the way, basically Clarin is working on a structure of metadata, which is called SIMD. And one of the topics of discussion for next week will be how is it possible to turn SIMD also to represent SIMD in linked data? So this topic which has just been raised.
Yeah, thank you. I was about to mention the cost action, but thanks. Yes, there's a lot going on, and if you can go to the cafe, Klein Cafe, do go. We have just 2 minutes left, and only 10 people left in this. It's become a very cozy Friday afternoon chat. Yeah, just one final call for questions, and then we can wrap up. Does anyone have or questions or just points to raise, really, comments? It's not a question, it's more of a comment. Well, then I really want to thank all of you for your time, especially if it's late on a Friday night or afternoon, and for contributing to a very interesting discussion. We're learning as we go, so please do fill in the feedback survey that will be sent early next week, so that we can adapt the next events, and maybe we can organize one together if you want, maybe on a specific topic that is you're particularly interested in or want to share more of your work on. And do remember the special collection, and feel free to share the call for papers with your colleagues. And yeah, stay in touch. We're on Twitter. You can Google me as well, and any of the guest editors, and they also have their own email address for the special collection. So yeah, enjoy your weekend, and hope you have nice weather, and I hope to see you again in some other event or collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.